Well, when I first heard it, I thought it was like pretty cool. But I'm gonna be like completely honest. Then I saw the price and I thought, dang, that's expensive. So that was my initial reaction.
Mm.
Mm.
Yeah, I didn't think much about it. I honestly thought we've already been to one, but turns out this is way different than what I thought it was going to be. But it was so a pleasant surprise.
Yeah, like it was a rise intensive. It was a lot more preaching and a lot more just back-to-back studies of like the Bible and whatever they were going to talk about. So I was like, oh, it's going to be one of those, nice leader retreats that we get to go to at a nice camp. So I was like, okay. That's my initial reaction.
My first impression was, I'm so scared I don't want to talk to strangers. And there were a lot of strangers. But when we sat down and heard the speakers talk about their segments, it was pretty amazing. Yeah, I was blown away.
I think my first impression was when I first entered that building where they were doing their service. I did not expect that many people to be there. Like I thought it was a small event, but I looked inside and there was a lot of people. So like, oh, this is pretty serious. And people are very passionate about learning about the Bible. So like, it's a big deal.
My initial reaction was, going into it, I thought it was going to be like any other leadership training or some sort of Bible study retreat. And then once we got there, we came a little bit late, but we checked in, got into a hotel, and then we talked to our roommate. His name was Bintu. And he was just like, man, you missed out. And I was like, what? We just missed out, Friday night. I mean, we couldn't come anyways, but how was it? And he said, yeah, man, it was really good. It was really good. It was really great. It was like almost life-changing. And then I was like, what, really? It's not even the main event. Like they were just probably doing regular casual vespers. And then he was like, no, it's like really, it's really good. It was really life-changing. The speakers are great and you're going to love it. I come from Florida, blah, blah, blah. But then he said it was really good. So that set the tone for the weekend of something like intensive and something serious.
Yeah, when you asked him how was it, I was kind of expecting like a maybe 5-sentence response, but then it turned out to be like 15 minutes long.
Yeah.
So like, he's a really passionate guy.
Yeah.
And otherwise, the content was so good that
Yeah.
he learned that much in that one session.
Yeah.
So like, that was pretty good.
I think I feel the same way. If someone asked, like, someone close was like, tell me about Arise, I think I could talk about it for 15 minutes. One thing that sticks with me is, so they talked about verses that we have already known and have read before, but the way they expound upon it has really gotten to me. Like, for example, when it was in Genesis, and we've probably read Genesis more than any other book because that's where everyone starts, and then that's around the time people give up too. So, but the speaker was talking about how when Eve ate the fruit, and then there was the whole thing about the serpent, and then God made a basically a prophecy about that. And then the speaker was talking about how that was definitely, like, not only was it a prophecy, but it was a declaration of war between good and evil. When he said the offspring of Eve will hit your head and he will strike your foot. When he said that was a declaration of war, that really got to me. I was like, oh my gosh. It not only was he just like saying it yet, like, oh, this is what you're going to be, you're being punished, but it was like, okay, this is going to be an all-out battle between my son and you and your followers. But at the end of days, you will see, everyone will see that you weren't the one who was right, and I will clear my name. It was pretty intense for me.
Yeah, like that Thursday, Friday night that we all hung out together and started talking about it. We were on the other side of the table. That was when we were talking about the wheat parable of the just like the weeds and the weeds or whatever the roots or the good land was planted by, it just gave so much perspective and just like so much like weaving between everything. Just like the parable, what it meant, along with, the Greek controversy and what the declaration of war was. And just the whole, selfishness versus unselfishness battle. And then his attempts to justify himself was just like, it's a general concept that we know, but it's the way they explained it was so articulated like really well and just gave new perspective. It was like a good refresher.
Yeah, I think you guys touched upon this already, but it's like little perspective differences between many of the verses and stories that we've already heard, but they kind of throw out little details that might seem small, and then it might make a huge impact on someone's lives. And that's kind of the things that I experienced from this intensive. Little facts just throw it in there that just gave you goosebumps or got me tearing up. So it's a really great experience.
I think I touched on it in the previous question about what happened in Genesis, that declaration of war. And then, what you guys talked about, the wheat parable, how I didn't quite see it that way before. And then when they kind of put it all together, ending it with why Jesus had to die on the cross, and then answering it with the whole, why is there war and suffering? Why is God allowing this? It's he doesn't want it, but it is the best way to create the best world. And that's when I was like, that makes sense. That makes a lot of sense. Like, I don't really see it any other way, so.
Like how he made an analogy with a logical sense. He gave the example of, let's say in a perfect world, babies up until age of 12 can never, they're invincible basically. They can never die. So then he's like saying, well, if that was one of God's options to bring about salvation and the best approach and best plan for our saving, then, let's say this wasn't the scenario, what would happen?
Right,
most people, go on.
Oh, sorry. I was just going to say, because most people have that problem, like, they make God an enemy because they say, why would you allow children to suffer and die?
Yeah. Like the whole idea, just his explanation, just the logical analogy. Let's take, he's even said, let's take away the Bible for a second. Just logically think about, okay, what's the deck that God was dealt with and why is there suffering in the world? It's just like answering that question of why is there, pain and suffering in the world? And then he goes into the explanation. I was like, wow, that just makes sense. Like, biblically, take the Bible aside for now, just like logically, that just connects. And just brought about new perspective. So
right. If children couldn't die before 12, then we wouldn't treat them so preciously as we do now.
Most people would exploit them.
Exactly.
yeah.
Use them for selfish purposes.
They'd be the best child soldiers.
Honestly,
Yeah.
oh my gosh.
No. Oh my gosh, guerrilla warfare, terrible.
That would be crazy.
Unending.
But I mean, they're gonna be invincible too. It's like, even if you use them in war, neither sides are gonna die because if they're both childs under 12, so there's never any war then.
That's terrible.
But one of the things that they brought up that kind of opened my eyes was that once Adam and Eve sinned, we basically, God and us, lost earth. We lost claim of earth, and Satan took hold of our earth. Even when Satan was tempting Jesus with all these worldly possessions, I did not think that had to do with anything to do with the story in the very beginning with Adam and Eve where we lost Earth. But I think that fact that Jesus acknowledged that Satan had a control over Earth, that was definitely a new fact for me. I never heard of that. So kind of all I can say is just I would recommend anyone to go now that I've been to it. Friendships are made. Food was pretty good. I mean, it's all vegetarian.
That fake chicken.
to me, it's pretty good because I'm already a vegetarian, so it was pretty good. But don't go just for the food. But there's a nice walk or trail that we went on. Just a peaceful, relaxing weekend.
But I think the people who really expounded on my perspective the most was both David Astrick and Ty Gibson.
I don't think I could say one over the other because they're very different, and because of that, they kind of they're like polar sides. But you can't have two of the same, because if you had two David Astrick, I'd be so tired of his energy. But Ty also brought his chill and calming voice, so I think they really complement each other.
They both definitely have their pros and cons. Well, mainly pros actually, and just their differences. But I don't know. For me, I think I more related to David Astrick just because, sure, it's good to reference the Bible and stuff like that, but maybe I'm just so numb to the stories and the things that took place, and I'm like, oh, okay, Jonah went into the whale, that's cool. It just didn't feel like relevant or real. It was just a story. And the way David Astrick was just preaching, he put logic. He made the people think. He was like, okay, just logically think about this. Take away the Bible for a split second. Just logically think, what would happen? What's going on?
He made it present day applicable.
Yeah. And it's just when things click, rather than we're referencing stories that, are true, but maybe I'm just desensitized to them. It just, one, again, brings another perspective into it's like, okay, that makes sense to me. Let's keep moving forward. And, I like this. I can't really explain it, but it just logically makes sense. And I like that. So
I think they complement each other really well to make a very well-rounded retreat. I would recommend it. I'd go again. I would definitely recommend it. If you want like a rejuvenation of your spirit and you want a fresh new perspective and you want to be forced to think and ponder, this is it. After that retreat, I was like, I'm going to read the Bible. I'm fired up,
Plus, they also have a segment at the very end where they have a Q&A session, so they're very knowledgeable. So if any questions that you've always wanted answered, you could always ask them and they would answer it, which is, I think is really good for people like me. I've always wondered what other people always had, there's questions that I never would think would be asked, but they ask us. And kind of gives me new ideas, new questions to think about based off of their questions and the answers that are given. So I think it's a pretty good feature there.
Yeah, I highly recommend it. It's definitely if your spiritual fire is gone, it's definitely a rekindler. It really helps you feel want to learn, and just pokes at your brain and just gives you these questions, and then those questions you get curious about, and it just sparks a little bit of something. to get you started. It's really 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 good. They answer your questions. They hit heavy hard questions and topics, and it's just a good experience overall. And now I know why it was bought out within like what, the first 2 weeks or something, and why it's why a lot of people would want to come, especially on their tour. So
Also, seeing so many people and being surrounded by so many passionate people, very life-changing in a way.
Yeah, thank you, church, for sponsoring us to be able to attend the Rise Intensive. I honestly, I don't even have to ask for that refund. I would just pay for myself. It was definitely worth the money. So, yeah, thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Way more than I expected, and hope to learn and grasp from that one weekend. So
Yeah.
thank you.
Thank you. I'm glad I went. I think if I didn't go, but I'd known, if I didn't go and I heard from them how good it was, I would have regretted it so much.
Well, that's great. So no refund for Andrew.
I'd be happy to take it.